Hey everyone, and thank you so much for joining me back here on KB Decor Crafts. For today's video, I made a few Dollar Tree boho inspired decor pieces for you guys. These are all very versatile. You don't have to just hang them up on the wall, but I'm just going to show you a few other ways to use these as decor pieces. Alright, so let's jump on in. For the first DIY, we're going to use one of the Dollar Tree mirrors that I recycled from another DIY, and as well as the dowel rods from the Crafter Square section. I'm also going to be taking out my mini table saw to cut down my dowel rods, which I'll have a link for it down in the description box below. So for the first dowel, we're going to cut down to 3 inches. This can also be done with a simple handsaw as well. For every size of dowel rods, we're going to be cutting out 6. I also use my Waverly Wax Antique paint to stain each dowel rod. And as always, I wipe off the excess stain just to give it a more natural toned stained look. This is where I was going in a different direction with this design, so I was using E6000 to glue down my sticks wherever it was going to meet the mirror to make sure that it wasn't going to go anywhere. I did also use a little bit of hot glue to help with holding it in place while drying. I then created a hexagon with the 6 dowel rods I cut out. So I was initially going to go bigger to smaller with this design, but it didn't quite work out that way. So instead, the little dowel rods that you see there, I actually put it on the other side. This was the initial shape that I was going for, but it wasn't going to work out with these sticks. So I then glued the smaller piece to the other side of the larger piece that we already cut out, which was the 3-inch one. That was going to go towards the inner part of the hexagon. Now I hope that makes sense, but the smaller piece that's inward towards the mirror is 2.5, or just about a little larger than 2.5 inches. You're going to glue that on the inside part. Then the other 3-inch will be on the outside. So I started building outward and adding 1/2 inch to every dowel rod after that one. The next one was 3.5 inches, and then I went to 4 inches and then 4.5. So since we were now off the mirror, there was no backing to this, so I just started gluing the dowel rods to each other using some wood glue. Now if you wanted to add a backing, you could easily just cut out some poster paper and cut out the right shape and just glue that to the back, so that way you're then gluing onto the actual paper. So then you'll see that I glued on my 4-inch dowel rod. And with the initial design that I had in mind, I ended up gluing these together, which were about 4.5 inches long. I then broke those apart so that way I could glue attaching to my mirror, and I also cut out another 4.5 inch 6 dowel rods to be able to place right on top to kind of create like a lift to this, kind of like an edge to this design. So yeah, I then just glued everything on with some wood glue. So here you can get a better view of how I created an edge around the entire piece by just gluing the dowel rod right on top of the design. It would be really cool to have a set of 3 of these, but I didn't have enough supplies, so I actually just ended up using this as a candle holder. That's what I like about each of these DIYs. It can be used for many different ways for decor around your space. So for my next DIY, I'm going to be using 3 packs of nautical rope, as well as some jute string from Dollar Tree and my hot glue gun. So to begin, I always like to remove the end of the nautical rope that has a piece of tape on it, and I'll just cut that off and then kind of open it up there in the center, add a dab of hot glue, and then I'll close it back up to secure the ends. Then taking a piece of cardboard and one of these stovetop covers from Dollar Tree, I'm going to trace out the circle, and I'm using the largest one. Then of course go ahead and cut that out. I tried doing this design without a backing and it did not work out so well, so this was my second attempt, and I began by winding up the nautical rope with a dab of glue in the center of the circle and then just winding it around, adding glue every so often. Now I have to say I was definitely really inspired by Wray, and if you don't know who he is, I will have a link down to his channel in the description box below, but he is a good friend of mine and an awesome DIYer who makes amazing DIYs, especially boho ones, but I'll have a link down in the description box below. He made a rug using this method, but I just was so inspired that I wanted to create something different but using the same techniques. Now, as he did mention in his video, it does get easier as you continue this process. I did try a couple times having to rip this off the cardboard, but once I did get it down, it was a little easier as I kept going, just putting down some hot glue and kind of scrunching up the nautical rope with a wave pattern and going completely around the circle. Now, as you're creating the design, you want to make sure to hold it in place for a few seconds to make sure it's adhering to the glue, and then going back in with a dab of glue under each hump. So after you're done, it should look something like this. I was then going to use a piece of nautical rope to wrap around this design, but I then decided to use jute string instead. Now for the jute string to actually show up a little better, I did triple the amount of jute string that I wanted to use to wrap around the design. I cut that out and then hot glued in place where I wanted to begin, and as I went, I twisted the rope around all together so it would kind of bind up as one. I made sure to add a dab of glue every so often so that it would stay in place. Then once you made a complete circle, go ahead and glue that down and then make sure to cut off any excess jute string. I then repeated the same steps, adding another piece of jute string. So these next few steps, just repeating the same as the first ones, you're going to keep going around in the same pattern, adding more jute string and nautical rope. Now once I was out of my first pack of nautical rope, I then realized that that one was a lot thinner than the other packs of nautical rope that I had, so that wasn't going to quite work out with the design. I then decided to just pull apart one of my other packs and take off one of the strands, since this comes like wrapped up in 3 strands. So I just pulled off one of them and I used the other 2 to create the same designs going around my entire circle. So once that was completed, I then went ahead with some jute string and wrapped it around twice like I did before. So I also had in mind to use some of the white nautical rope that Dollar Tree carries. I pulled it apart by taking off the tape and then just pulling the strands apart, just using one of them. So I was initially going to try to attempt to create another row with the white nautical rope of the loops, but since I had no more backing of the cardboard, it wasn't going to quite work out. So I decided to just wrap this around to create like a final border around the design. So to start that, I just started by hot gluing around the jute string and wrapping it around, trying not to push too hard against it since, like I said, there was no more backing of the cardboard, so you're doing this on the very edge of just the jute string. I really like how this completed the look of this design that I was going for, so I think it was a good idea to add that different color and texture to this piece. If you don't like the cardboard showing, you could always paint the back maybe like a black color. I think that would look really cool, but I didn't mind the cardboard showing. Now I wanted to give the option of being able to hang this up if I wanted to, so I just flipped it over and just added a piece of nautical rope to be able to hang up. So here it is hung up, so you could see one option of how you could use it as a wall hanging decor piece, but I decided to put it on my nightstand underneath my table lamp, and I think it looks really pretty here. For my last DIY, I used one of these small mirrors from Amazon, but you could use one from Dollar Tree, as well as these wooden beads that I got a 200 pack from Amazon. I'll have the links down below. I then stained them using the Waverly Wax Antique paint. In total, I used 25 of them. Now to correct my mistakes, I did initially hot glue these on, which I don't recommend, but I learned very quickly that I should have just used E6000 from the beginning instead of waiting for them to fall off later on. So do as I say and not as I do, and make sure to glue these on with something sturdy. This is what it looks like all glued on. You could have left it as a natural wood tone look, that would have looked really pretty, but I like the way it looks stained. Now taking some of this natural raffia from Dollar Tree, I'm going to take out one of the bushels and unravel them and straighten them out as best as I can. Then grabbing a few of them, I laid them behind the mirror to see where I wanted them to lay, and then grabbing my hot glue gun, I put it down a decent amount to lay down the raffia. I found it was easier to just cut out a few of them and place them down as I go, that way I could just worry about where I wanted to trim them at the end. Every time I lay down some of the raffia, I would also place a good bit of the hot glue on top of it to make sure that none of the ones that were on top would be lifting off. After all the raffia was glued down, I went back in with my scissors and just cut some of it down, creating a circle in the center to be able to hang this up if I wanted to. So I then flipped this over to see where exactly I wanted to trim up my raffia. You could leave it long or however long you'd like it. I just prefer to trim it up a bit to give it a more cleaner look. I did leave some of the pieces a little longer here and there just because I liked the way it looked. But you could totally leave this as long or as short as you would like. It's entirely up to you. So here's the final look. I really like how it looks hung up. I couldn't decide where exactly I'd like to keep it, but I think this would also be really pretty as another candle holder. So I just want to say thank you all so much for being so patient with me as I take this time of healing with my foot and making DIYs for you guys. I can't really go out at the time to get new products and new supplies, but I'm doing the best I can with what I have on hand, and I hope you all like what I've made. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you're new, and stay tuned for some more boho inspired DIYs, and I'll see you all in my next one.